and welcome. Hope to get all of your attention. So, welcome to our panel this evening. It's getting quite late for Friday, but before we get to Friday night activities, a little bit more serious, but maybe sometimes less serious discussions. Today we're going to talk about diversity in tech. Before we get to the content, a little bit of instructions. So first of all, those of you who want to participate, which I hope is all of you, then there's a QR code. Using that, we have a question for you to answer, but also we would like to hear your questions. So here's the QR code, and using this, you can get access to our question to you. We already have 8 votes so far, so hopefully we'll get more. And also, I will see your questions to us. Now, if you don't want to do any of this QR business, which is fine as well, then we do have funky little cube. So later, I will ask for audience questions, not just like at the end. I'll do that a few times. So feel free to raise your hand the old-fashioned way, and we'll get you the little cube, and you can participate in our discussion as well. But the QR code is available the whole time, so feel free to put your questions there, answer our question, and that way we can get your thoughts as well. All right. But now on to the content. So welcome to our panel that has a slightly provocative title. I don't know what you think. I think it was slightly planned this way. But we're going to talk about what kind of people we would like to see more in technology. And with me today, so we have here, first of all, next to me is Wanderson Jackson from Pipedrive, and he is the group design manager. Then we have Liina Laas. She's the Deel head of expansion in Central Eastern Europe, and also founder of Better Fund. And at the end we have Mohammad Tariq Meeran, senior lecturer at TalTech IT College. And my name is Catlyn Kirna. I am a cybersecurity expert at CGI Estonia, and I'm also a lecturer at Tallinn University. And we will be chatting about diversity today with your questions and participation. Now, to kick us all off, just a quick fire round, starting right now from here to there. What is diversity for you? What does it mean? Let's do it very quickly.
That's a very good question, and my simple answer is diversity means a space or context where people can be participative within this context, whether it's diversity in terms of color or people of color, whether it's people with disabilities, and all of the other spectrum within. I think that's what represents diversity for me.
All right, thank you. Liina.
Yes, I guess the same. So when you have a group of people who are different, not only from ethnically, but also age, gender, and different backgrounds. So that's where you start to see the interesting stuff.
And Mohammed?
Yeah, thank you. For me, diversity means a closely linked term with inclusion. Because diversity without inclusion doesn't mean anything. And with diversity and inclusion, for me it means a contribution of individuals in the workforce, in the educational sector, in the society, regardless of their gender, race, ethnicity, education, social, economic status. So that's what it means, diversity and inclusion for me.
So lots of different kinds of people coming together, working together, doing things together. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things we should establish right away is that we don't see diversity as a game of Pokemon where you just collect one of each and then you place them in some kind of environment, and then you've met your diversity quotas, all good, moving on. That we mean actually working with different kinds of people. Now, a while ago, there was a small storm online. A head of a tech company called, funnily enough, Snowflake in the US said that diversity goals are not important. We want quality. Diversity is a secondary thing. We want quality first.
Okay.
And my question to you is, does it even matter that there are diverse people? Like, we started off right now thinking, of course, yeah, we want different kinds of people, but why? Why do we want different kinds of people? Why don't we just hire the best people?
Okay, that's already a very good question in itself. Like, what do you mean by the best people? The best people can come from anywhere, anyhow, any size, any age. So the best people comes from diversity as it all.
So I think sort of the first point here, taking from here, is that quality and diversity are not opposites of each other.
Obviously, I think that actually diversity, the only reason that quality exists and the higher it is when there's actual diversity and genuine inclusion. Because as you just mentioned, there's this quote saying the following: diversity can be engineered, but inclusion cannot. So ticking the box like, oh, we need this amount of people of color and this amount of women, and we fit the percentage and we're a diverse company, that's not the reality. Inclusion should be a very big factor together with diversity, because it makes you put the people in a place where they generally have difficulties or challenges reaching, and making them feel belonging. The sense of belonging is one very important factor. So yeah, that's it.
But Liina, you work for a private company as well, but Liina, you work for a private company, but isn't the main goal of private companies to make money? Why do they want diversity now?
Well, funnily enough, there was a recent study that came out that tried to analyze it. Like, there's not that much data. Well, we say there's not that much data, but what they did was they looked at VC funds, and with them it's quite easy to see what the results are. So they analyzed the team of the VC funds, what they invested in, and whether they were profitable or not. Funnily enough, the VC funds that have women in the team performed much better than all male teams, and they realized that it wasn't even the selection of the initial investments, but what happened after. So what kind of help and support they gave to the teams. So in the VC funds that were all male, they only had sort of one view. So yeah, the reality is if you have a diverse team, they will have more ideas. They've seen different things. They come from different backgrounds. They will collectively solve problems faster.
I have an interesting story from the United States. So a company developed this AI that was supposed to help with interviewing new hires. And they tested it in the company a lot, and then they released it outside the company, not directly to the final market, but already to some other companies, and it was supposed to basically interview candidates. And there was a huge problem. You see, they had tested it with their team, which were all white dudes, roughly the age of 30. And now when it went into actual use, it had to interview Americans. And Americans are very different shapes and sizes and skin colors, and some are even women, I've heard. The AI was completely lost because it had not been trained at all with any kind of other groups in mind. And of course, one could say that, well, they could have then just done group testing, they should have gotten in people to test it with. But it seems that they didn't think of that, which is a good sign, again, that there was a lack of diverse thinking amongst the group. But I have a question for you, Mohammad, that you work in an academic setting. How is this diversity issue in the academic setting?
Well, the way I see it, are you specifically referring to the field of ICT or?
Yes.
Yeah. So in the field of ICT, this diversity depends on the country and the region. If you're thinking of Estonia, we can see diversity if it is Females educating in ICT, yes, they are. There is a great portion of female who are participating in ICT education. And some countries like Finland, some other European countries as well. But if you go outside of Europe, then the situation changes. You might see more male in the ICT education, but less female. If you go to the US, you might also see something different. So in Estonia, I think the ratio of male and female is something that reflects the population, and there are enough or more women in some programs. In some programs there was less. It depends on the type of program, country, and the cultural barriers in some countries also stop people coming to technical fields like ICT.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you look at different countries, the reason why the sector isn't diverse is very different from country to country. In many Asian countries, the higher education has loads of women, but they don't get hired. In some other countries, and quite often in Europe and in the US as well, there's a lack of women in IT education. And in the case of Estonia, we, for example, know when girls are directed away from ICT, roughly when they're around 10. And because girls shouldn't know these things. Though, of course, not every girl should work in IT. Not every boy should work in IT. I mean, we work in IT. We can tell you not everybody should come. Sometimes we don't want to work in IT. But the idea that, there should be a gender thing that, boys should go to the programming class and then girls should go, what do girls do? Dancing and cooking, probably. So that the idea that that girls shouldn't do that and boys should, sort of that directs girls away from it, and that sort of seems to be Estonia's problem. And when we look at United States, then it's a bit of both. Of course, there are also language issues in, for example, in Estonia as well, Russian speakers versus Estonian speakers. In the U.S., there is a strong big issue with Hispanic people and basically. Everybody who's not white or Asian should not work in tech because that's for smart people. And there are these very strong stereotypes in society. So how do we break stereotypes, or what can we do about this?
I strongly believe that it has a historical context, as you mentioned, like when younger, generally that, like dolls and everything, like from in the very beginning of the age of computing and stuff like that, you see that the computers were directed to boys, and women, like the girls had to, like, the little kitchen and the dolls and stuff like that. And as time goes by, it became a situation where, as the title says, always a 35 years old white man world. And what happened is that the exclusion starts very early and it's extended because a lot of the words that is used in IT are just overcomplicated stuff to say very simple things. If you say something that is super complex, just like overworded and make things look difficult, maybe it's not difficult, but if you hear a lot of jargons and difficult words, people tend to back down. And especially you coming from a context where you're not really incentivized or motivated to express yourself or to participate in such, when you see something like, what is a programming language? And then they're going to start putting a set of complex wordings, and it's also a way of excluding people by using complex terminologies.
But we've talked about different minorities, but what about other blocks, like for example ableism or which has also become an issue has been sort of shown to be an issue in Estonia as well. The people with physical disabilities have complained that they are not taken seriously, even though tech is in some cases tech is actually the perfect outlet for them because of their limited mobility, for example, and also poverty as an issue globally. This is sort of open for anybody. How do we deal with any of that, or why do we even want people like that? in tech? Because we were talking about why diversity, but why do we want people from poor backgrounds, for example, who didn't have a computer growing up?
Well, same thing, that they've seen different things. So, I mean, it doesn't, like someone who is highly educated might have seen, window of these kinds of situations, where someone poor doesn't mean stupid, right? So, but yeah, it is a good question. How do we deal with that? It's, I would say in all of the cases for discrimination and people being left out, it's representation. So if you haven't seen anyone in that kind of role that is like you, you're not that likely to go for that yourself. It seems like that's not for me, so, not so long ago all presidents were men, and now the world's a bit different. So
now they're mostly men.
Yes, but now at least we've seen one woman over here. So that's a step forward.
Well, I mean, that's done now. We don't need to do that again.
One thing I would add, like, for example, coming from a personal experience, is that I work in a startup that they're creating, like, their main focus was like, creating a financial system to support the people that are unbanked and underbanked. Cool, awesome. But they had a group of...
Can you explain what unbanked means?
Unbanked is people that didn't have access to basic banking service. For example, in Nigeria or in other regions in Africa, in other countries in Africa, people don't have access even to basic documentation. So if you don't have access to basic documentation, how are you going to be able to send and receive money from a different country? If you, for example, your daughter is working in Estonia, but you're back in Nigeria, how can your daughter send you money? And a lot of the product was being built by a group of white men, and they were like, but why this app is not working? Why this is not working? And then after being hired and looking into this, I'm like, first of all, everything was being designed, and thinking from a white male perspective, and thinking to deliver this product for white males, right? They were thinking in
white
a context...
White males in rich countries.
Yeah, in rich countries, with like very Scandinavian type of design. But the reality is, majority of the users, the customers, were from India, from Nigeria. So if you don't design something that I can relate, can identify, can feel that is like conversates with me with the language that I do understand, it's really hard to succeed, and it's really hard to include. And there is the two contexts of diversity and inclusion. One side of where people who build, and one side of people who use. If you have a product that is created by a certain group of people, but then the customer base and the client base is a different group of people, it will not work.
I have actually a good story that's related to banking. Is we have also a number in our topic today, 35, and a lot of products are made for people roughly between the ages of 18 and 45. Maybe give or take, both sides. But I have a good example. For example, my grandpa had a piece of paper that my mother had written for him before she died, where she had detailed how to get money out of the ATM. Basically, click here, and then click here, and then click here. But then, because innovation is everywhere, they changed the interface. And a lot of products that are designed to be used by everybody in society are designed actually for a very specific group, and they're leaving behind, for example, cognitively slower people, the elderly, people who might not go with the innovation that well. And in case of my grandpa, that was a perfect example, because somebody had to write it again now. Well, these days he's very old, so I actually take out the money for him. But that was, and to give you an idea of diversity, before seeing that, I had not thought of this before. And seeing him struggle, I was like, oh, yeah. And now I've seen over the years, as I take care of my grandparents, I have seen so many things that are not designed for them. And the reason why I bring this up, because we're talking about business, right? We're talking about making money and so on. In Europe, what is the fastest growing demographic? Old people. We need more products that are designed for people. And what's funny as well is that I quite often hear when people say old people, people who are 60. 60 is not old in this day and age. But it's like, well, I've had this with students a lot. We're gonna create a product that is for the old people who don't really use computers. 60-year-olds. And I said that every 60-year-old I know has at least one computer at home, and mostly use them at work as well. When we talk about elderly, we're talking 90. But if you are, 25. 60 and 90 is the same thing. Can't really tell the difference. So you do need, but you don't need to hire 90-year-olds, but you need to hire 60-year-olds whose parents are 90 and who have this, first-hand contact and idea. And then you make the products for that demographic because, as I said, it's a growing demographic.
Yeah.
And you need to bring more, basically it's a business decision. But I have this question, and because Liina, you work in an international company. Are there any drawbacks to having lots of? I know, but I'm going to ask her now. I also work in an international company, but you work in an international company. Have you noticed any drawbacks to diversity?
Well, yes. Different cultures have their different behaviors. So sometimes what is normal for one, the other one doesn't understand. So let's say we have team members from, I believe now, over 70 different countries. And sometimes, let's say, how an Estonian communicates with an Israeli person maybe doesn't always match. Like, no one means anything in a bad way, but just the communication styles are different. So you have to put some thought and effort into it, how you get this team to work together in a way that people don't start fighting just because they're maybe misunderstanding each other. So that is definitely a challenge, and that needs to be thought through, and there needs to be processes, and you communicate how we do things, how we communicate, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Mohammad, how about you? You work in academia and you have students from all over the world.
I not only have students from all over the world, but I also have students, local students with disabilities. Last semester I had a student who was completely blind. And she took a course with me where she was struggling with the content that's not text-based. And there I realized that in our field we have lots of diagrams, we have lots of maps and things and hardware that for those type of people it's hard to work with. Now, it is also a fact that when those products were designed, the interfaces were designed, the course content were designed, people were not taken into consideration. So, as Jackson also rightly said, if in the teams that build these products, there are people who have these type of mindsets or who have experienced disability, then they can give recommendations. They can make a product much more useful. And coming back to the first question that you raised, this adds to the quality. Diversity makes quality better. There is no research that says that diversity makes the quality worse. The research always shows that it makes it better. So I also had students who had difficulty with moving their hands, with moving their legs, with moving their head. But that doesn't mean that that disability does not allow them to be a good ICT professional, because ICT is now a very big field. There is enough room for anybody to find a place for themselves, even if they have some kind of disability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That it still all comes back to quality. But why don't we have that much diversity? What do you think? We can start. Whoever wants to start first.
Go ahead.
Your own experiences, for example, in your companies. Why is it that we need to come together and talk about it?
Well, if I may start. From my perspective, the main reason that this diversity and inclusion is a topic of discussion is that it is considered as a problem. For example, in Europe, there is a diversity and inclusion problem in ICT. So the statistics show that out of 12 executive managers, only one is a female. Mm-hmm. And out of every $100 that's invested, $92 goes to the men-only teams. Mm-hmm. So that means there was a problem. That doesn't mean that those who are investing, they think that females are incapable. That means that they have a very narrow mindset. Because I have had students, I have been teaching for almost 20 years. I have had female students who had outperformed the boys. So it's not a matter of girls can't do it, they can do it even much better. It's the mindset, it's the cultural barriers, and it's the narrow thinking that one group of people think that they have some form of superiority over others.
Yeah.
And the other problem is that this VC or venture capital that is given by big companies is mostly owned by white men.
From rich countries.
From rich countries. So the reports show that most of these companies who are giving these VCs, they are, first of all, male. And when they give those VCs, they don't set some requirements for inclusion. They just, as you also mentioned previously, that we just need a quality product. We don't care about...
Just make money.
Just make money. That's their objective. So there is where the problem comes. And from my personal perspective, diversity and inclusion should start from homes, even not schools. It should start at the very early childhood. When the parents, they have a daughter and a son, they should not differentiate between the two. If they give something to the boy, they should also give something to the girl. If they give preference one over the other, this is where the problem starts.
Yeah.
So in some countries, it is unfortunately the case. Yeah. Maybe not in Europe, but we have such examples in many countries, that the best thing or the more investment goes to the boy than the girl.
Well, if we're talking about venture capital, there's also another tier. Where does venture capital get their money? And it's another level of even older and whiter man.
Old money,
so,
and new money.
And they, of course, people do tend to network and hang out with people who are like them. So it's more likely that it's men that they know already. But also there is a lot of just outright discrimination. So, for example, some stories or responses I have heard saying like, oh, women don't need to be in VC. They don't want to do that. There is no need for a woman to be a VC, and there is no need to invest in women even, because, I don't know, they might have children or something. So the problem is that kind of mindset is still in where the money for venture capital comes from. So trying to change that will take some time, so we need to get creative. But on top of these, we're all thinking, why aren't there women in IT? Why aren't there women here or there? There are also a lot of men who think that they know what women or people of color or who else want or need.
Yeah.
And usually these opinions are not true.
Well, there's actually a question from the QA as well, that that we talked about, quality products earlier and how we need diverse groups, and H has said that diverse groups can also design products that are not inclusive. Can it be that the whole topic is more about not having basic knowledge about service design and design thinking? So that if I take this one step further, that what if we have just very good teams who are super good at, focus grouping and things like that, then do we then even need diverse people on the team?
I love this question. And whoever asked this question, props for you. But just, if there's a diverse team, but still not design an inclusive product, then there need to be some step back. Because first of all, if there's a diverse team, does not mean that is an inclusive team that is actually designing an inclusive product. That's the first thing. Service design or whatever type of design you're talking about, it is something that is and will be used as a tool. It is just a tool. Service design is basically just mapping beyond the digital product. Go from here until the end of the product. So I think that it comes down mostly to actually analyzing if this diverse team that you're talking about is actually inclusive. Meaning, if the ceremonies or the structuring or the building of the product, the decision making come from an actually inclusive organization. Because I've seen the organization that they say they tick all of the box, saying, "Oh, we are a super diverse company," but in reality, when the decision making comes to place, it is still being made and being done by a white male-dominated decision-making context. And some of the times, what happens is, and I've seen this many times, is that as a person of color, you go and you suggest something, and your opinion is undermined. Even if you have data backing your decision is also undermined because the Mr. Man thinks that he has all of the knowledge, and your data and whatever or your knowledge is not as important as his. So there's a sort of invalidation that happened within.
So it's more than just quality of the product, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
every
goes,
step of the way.
Yeah.
But why don't we have? You come from the other side of the world, and you've seen different countries and different hiring practices as well. So why don't we have diversity? What is your experience?
One of the core things is like I'm Brazilian, right? So I love the music over there, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm about to dance.
It seems like, oh, you should wrap it up.
Yeah.
Let's go party.
Either ways, I lost my thought process.
You said something about Brazil.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Brazilian. Yeah. And one thing that happened. God, that's cool. Cool music. So as a Brazilian, we still have a heavily. It's really hard to talk with this.
Focus.
Okay, let's stay focused. So coming from Brazil is still a country that is heavily based upon structural racism.
You're not doing anything to break the stereotype that Brazilians are weak when rhythms are around.
That's true. It's hard to
you're
focus
making that stereotype worse.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like music and like, okay, I want to dance. But the thing is, like, as Brazil is still a country that is like majority like really, really, really racist, because it comes that when a population is more than 50% is people of color and mostly blacks, and then a smaller minority that contains the power, like in terms of finance and everything. It is like they have the power still. They have the money. So they do the investing. They do the hiring. They do the investment in real estate, in tech and everything. So if you have a majority that don't have access to resources, it already starts there. And structural racism is a thing that is really hard and really there and present, because like this guy owns a company, he's gonna hire his son or his cousin that is a white male because it's closer. So you want to maintain that rather than hiring a black woman that has all of these competencies that can execute this job really well. So it comes from a place from structural racism. It has like really ingrained in these organizations. And slowly we are like doing the very best to make this become smaller.
So it's what I gathered from all of your answers is that a lot of these issues start first of all from home, and they end up with the hiring practices and then education in between. So it's sort of every step of the way, and a lot of it is society based. But then that brings us to this question. So if this is a societal problem, then how is it now specifically a tech problem? We can't change the society. I mean, it's not our fault.
We can, yeah, and we have to. So the only way to make changes is lead by example. So if we keep doing the same thing, and that reminds me, some years ago we had this discussion, and a VC fund manager asked, okay, so we're talking about diversity. If I have two candidates that are, both great, equal in every way, one's a man, one's a woman, do I have to hire the woman? And the answer that was given to that question was, yes, the woman is a better candidate because you have a team full of dudes. She will bring you a different kind of deal flow. So she's actually a better candidate, so you'd be stupid not to hire her. But there was a lot of this pushback I've seen also as well from my previous colleagues, usually programmers, saying like, yeah, everyone's talking about diversity, so now we're just going to start hiring women because they are women, and now we won't have good programmers. They don't need to know anything,
we're just going to hire them.
Yeah, and I said, well, that's obviously not the case. Mm-hmm. So people are misinformed, and the only way to change this is to lead by example, hire more women, and there are a lot of qualified women. Women are more educated in Estonia, for example. Same thing with people of color. If you have never seen any on your team, or maybe there's one, they will probably feel lonely. So it's not going to just work out that you hire one woman, one black guy, someone from Asia.
Pokemon collection, one of each.
Yeah, it's the same thing that you both also mentioned, that we need inclusion and we need to start doing these things systematically, rather than no candidate showed up.
And before I give it to Mohammad, taking from your example, like, do I need to hire the woman? I think it's so important it's not only about men versus women. It's also to look at the wider context. Like, for example, if that woman has the same background as the guys, maybe they're all, if we're looking at countries with huge inequality, like they are all from rich backgrounds, they probably went to the same universities together, and the guy is actually from a very poor background and from a completely different background, then from diversity point of view, he might also be the better perspective. So it's not just, I'm not disagreeing with you, I think that choice was good, but sort of the idea of diversity as well is that it's actually very complicated and lots of different angles to it. Mohammed, this is gonna get very difficult. Those of you who are at home, then I don't know how much you hear it, but we have a party which has started over there. But I'll give it to Mohammed.
I wanted to add that something that we should not mix about diversity and inclusion is that with diversity and inclusion, we don't mean that hire somebody who is less qualified because he or he is black or has a different skin color or has a different gender. With diversity and inclusion, we mean don't follow this practice that if you have two candidates who have similar qualification, they are right for that position, but you give preference to, let's say, a white or a male over a female. Because of these racial issues or racism and whatever you label it. So don't put labels on the people and give that as a reason why this person should not be employed and this person should be. This is where the problem is. So we don't mean that when we say a diverse environment, inclusion, take anybody who is even not educated, not qualified, but take it because you have to put that tick mark. I don't have any problem with a company that has all white men, but
I do have a problem with that.
No, I mean that if they couldn't find anyone,
But if they,
we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that in a moment.
That's a very good one. Okay.
if they couldn't find anyone, then why didn't anyone want to come to that company? There's probably reasons.
Yeah.
I have another example. Recently, someone posted that, hey, we need more women in this field, so we're looking for a candidate, but no one is applying. Like, women, where are you? I said, okay, look at your company. It's all old men, all of you. So why would a woman want to come and work with you? And also, if you're posting something, and their ignorance in that sense was little bit strange, that they didn't realize the problem why women aren't applying isn't that they are not there, they just do not want to come. They are not selling their employer brand well enough for women.
Yeah. One thing that I can talk about that is like, I can't imagine a place where there's like no women or no people of color. That is in Brazil. As I mentioned, it has more than 50% of the population that is composed by people of color, majority black. And there is this investment company, I'm not going to mention their names, but they posted their company photo, more than 500 people. Out of the 500 people, 2 women. That's it. Only 2 women, and every single person was white. How is it possible that you're going to come with the argument saying that...
And it wasn't Iceland.
And it was in Iceland. It was nice. It was Iceland. I'm like, okay, I kind of get it, but not really, but, kind of. But like in Brazil, where the majority of the population is people of color, like it doesn't fit in my head, And amazingly, like for example, at Pipedrive, we have our organization where more than half of the executive are women, and more than 40% of the organization is composed by women, which is something that I haven't seen in Brazil as actively, And in leadership, I could have seen like a person of color. I'm like, oh my God, like it gives me the motivation. Like, dude, I can reach to that next level. Like you see an Indian, a person of color, and you're like, damn, actually that's possible, And it gives me the motivation to move forward and to go through all of the hardship. Because I worked in an organization where I was the only black person there. The only black person with the organization with 300 people. I was the only black person, and it feels weird, and it is weird. So yeah, that's coming from a place where I do believe that talent can be found anywhere, and especially after COVID, there is no excuse to say that there is an organization that is fully white dominated. Because now we live in a remote world. Deel is there, that they are solving this problem or trying to support with
the advertising
plugin.
But yeah, it just doesn't wrap around my head.
Well, I've spent a significant portion of my life being the only woman in the room, and quite often it is difficult to be the only whatever in the room and to be different, and then sort of because it's sort of difficult on 2 different levels. On one level, you're expected to represent your whole demographic. So what do women want? Or what do black people want? Wanderson, tell us, what do all black people want?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is also that when you disagree, then it's like, oh, this is some nonsense.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen to me. I have a face that when I'm annoyed, then it doesn't really work out very well for others. But again, sort of there are these certain expectations as well. If you want to break through as a woman in a man's world, you have to sort of behave in a certain way. But there is some truth to the idea as well that it is difficult to do diverse hiring because quite often you don't have these quality candidates, and there are different reasons for them. One is we already mentioned that they're sort of pushed away. Sometimes it's an issue of access to higher education or access to the relevant education as well, especially with in countries with inequality. So is there a way because we're going to slowly move into the field of can we improve things. So is there a way for tech companies, for example, make a difference in society? Because you, Liina, you said earlier as well, like, of course we have to make a difference. So what possible ways could there be? I mean, obviously, a company is not gonna go and change society, but they can do some things. So what could they do to improve things in general?
Education.
So what can they do in education?
Education. For instance, I'm just going to give a small context, but like, for instance, in the education system from the country that I come from, in my case, I had to work. I had to work from midnight to 5 in the morning. Damn, but this song is really hard to talk. But yeah.
But I have to say, you are the most affected of us all.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah. In my context, I had to work from midnight to 5 in the morning, then go to university from 8 to midday, then go to another course, then work and loop for 4 years in my life, right? Where when I started the company and back in Brazil, my co-founder, all he did was go to university. Look at the difference. The barrier of entrance into tech is so much higher for people of color and women in general, because there's so much more complication that it comes beyond just ethnicity. It also has the impact from financial background. While my co-founder, he used to go to university in a BMW, a Mercedes, and he had it easy. I used to go in public transportation. I used to go to university, technical school, work, to reach to the same level, the same destination that he had. So it is like a really, I'm not talking about unfair, but it's an uneven race. Like when you, like if you're like racing, like running, it's like dudes already started like really ahead and has way more access, more advantage. He comes from a private school, he went to a private trainings, and then he getting to university, in the best university, and get the best job faster because of this disparity. While I had to hustle for like 4 years, sleeping only 3 hours, he had it good. So you look at this, and people talking about meritocracy. I would even talk about that, but people talk about merit. It's impossible to talk about merit without context.
So maybe more, maybe scholarships or something to help people. Get access better.
Yeah, when it comes to solution, like one thing that helped a lot is like, for example, in Brazil, there is this quota for people of color, like from indigenous, for people of color in general. They can apply to a selected number of scholarships so that they would make sure that more indigenous people, more African, Brazilian people, and other groups have this selected number that they can compete and get in. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it will continue being a white-dominated context where you go to school, you go to trainings, and then you have more chance to get in university. Where in the other context, like you do all of this bunch of things, still have to compete to go for the same position, which is extremely unfair. So starting like with more active like education within the basics, going within scholarships, and try to talk more actively about it. I think it's a really good way to start.
But do you not think, like, thinking about your story here, so if I'm a recruiter and I hear the story of this guy, rich parents, went to the best university, great, or this guy who did all of that, who do I want to hire? Because that one seems to have worked
But you're coming
harder.
from a point of view that you're looking at genuinely the merit aspect, but the society in that case is so broken anyway that there is a belief that people who are not from a privileged background are stupid anyway. So the same way with if you have a woman candidate who has raised a bunch of kids and works on 5 different jobs, but she's still a woman.
Yeah.
And that's bad. So I mean, I think the issue there is that a lot of the barriers are based on the same stereotypes. And yes, you would go like, well, this person seems to have a background of working very hard. Of course I'm going to hire it. But if the local culture base says that, yeah, but I mean, he comes from, the wrong side of town, then that affects the practices as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we're coming back to we can't change society, but we can change some things at a time. But what are you, going on from either Liina or Mohammad, what are your thoughts? How can how can tech companies improve their pool of candidates?
Well, before we move to tech companies, first we should think of this issue from this perspective, that countries that allow foreigners to come study, work, and settle in another country, they definitely make a diverse society at the end of the day. Then they should also have a diverse workforce. Otherwise, if those who get educated, who are raised in this environment, at the end of the day, they're not given the chance to study or work, then you have a problem. So countries who accept, for example, now this refugee crisis, many countries are accepting refugees. So if they're accepting refugees, they should also accept the fact that they should become diverse. We are not in 50 years ago or 100 years ago. So we are living today, and we are tackling with these problems.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, for example, the situation that is currently happened. I have friends in Ukraine, and from various backgrounds, and the thing that happened explicitly is that the solidarity happened, but the solidarity happened to a specific group. I had friends from Nigeria. I have friends from Nigeria, from different countries, from Turkey and all of that. While going through this process of going to Poland and other countries, they were being discriminated, being treated unevenly, treated explicitly differently, because the world showed more commotion for a country you don't expect that to happen in Europe. And when it happened, which is really unfortunate, the commotion and this, global commotion, it was really attention for a very, very long time. It's this really sad thing. But also, even though there is this sad thing that is happening to Ukraine, they were still happening discrimination within. And it makes it how can you have this solidarity and it's only selective? Because, for example, in Pakistan is happening something really, really horrible, and other places that is also happening really horrible, but the world put all of the focus upon Ukraine because it's a country that's majority white, and I'm not saying that it's you should not, but it's just for it to show the reality that sometimes the solidarity and the attention, it is selective, coming from the media, coming from everything that you has. So I think it comes from a place that it breaks down to if you enable access to countries, if you enable access to education in different countries, as a foreigner, I would feel even safer if I would have more than a few months. If for instance I lose my job, I have only a few months, and then I have to go back home.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of take my tech hat off, and I'm going to put my international relations lecturer hat on for a moment, and to answer. The world has, by the way, moved on from Ukraine. Most of the world doesn't care anymore, and only Eastern Europe still cares. But that's also sort of understandable. Mm-hmm. But you are right that there is a double standard quite often. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of interesting as well with Ukrainians as well. If you look at Western Europe, and to some extent the East as well. They're still not the same, that they're sort of seen above as non-Europeans, immigrants, but still not the same as locals. The same thing happened here as well, that, let's bring in lots of course we'll accept all the refugees, but even I've encountered, and even in the tech sector, which that's why we're here, because it sort of seems very progressive. It's like, okay, should we hire these Ukrainian immigrants? They need jobs now, and even I've heard in the tech sector this, and this, by the way, is real. What was said was that no, because first of all, they're mostly women, And second, they're very traumatized. We can't really bother them with jobs and stuff right now. And and also there is sort of a prevalent belief as well. And we don't really know the education system in Ukraine. It's not really EU. So yeah, maybe let other people hire them. So the point here is that you are right, that there's definitely a double standard, but I would say that there's more than double. I think there is, as a sort of long-term Eastern European, I've noticed as well, there are levels, and yes, Ukrainians are above non-Europeans, but there's still lots of steps until they're like proper Western white people that can be accepted and should be integrated into society, and the Ukrainians. But you are right that the inclusion quite often, and today on our way here as well, Liina and I talked about this, that quite often diversity happens one topic at a time. That right now we're hiring women, and then suddenly, oh, we should hire people of color, but we should also still keep an eye on women. No, people of color now. But there are also women of color. Oh, yeah, that doesn't matter. So there's one topic at a time, sort of one inclusion at a time, and we kind of move on from one to another and so on. But you're also right about the government, because one of the issues the tech sector in Estonia has had regarding diversity is government resistance.
Yes, actually, we at Deel also, in some cases, do visas, and I've seen this here. And this person fit the criteria. They fit the salary, they fit the education, everything, and then we got an answer that it's rejected out of nowhere. They said, no, immigration quotas are full. Even though for that level of skill and salary, it should fall outside of the quota. So then we went and did a startup visa instead. But this is definitely an issue, and imagine this, you get a new job and then you start communicating with the Estonian police or whatever country it is. And they are usually quite hostile. They do not want to let you in. So it is not a nice process. It takes months, and usually they are relatively rude to you. And asking questions, seeing the person as a criminal, where they just want to come here, live, work, and pay the tax money that we really do need. Mm-hmm. So that definitely needs to be improved, especially in Estonia, when we are lacking, I've lost count now, is it 5,000, 10,000 or 100,000 IT professionals, somewhere there. Mm-hmm. So we are saying we need more people, but then we don't accept them. So the solution, I would say, is, of course, hire remotely. Mm-hmm. So that's how you can also intentionally build a really diverse team. When, you have some things that maybe matter, like time zones, but you get to pick from a much bigger talent pool, because here we have really exhausted our resources.
Well, I work in a company where some offices are in North America and some in Australia, and we're fine. And everybody has their own office, but we work together just fine, and it's not a problem. You just have to adjust accordingly. But okay, so far we have ideas for improvement. Improvement of candidate pool is, invest in education more, then lobbying the government, getting more people on board. There was one suggestion earlier from Q&A, and the question is this. So have you studied the motivation of so-called pioneers in tech industry? Why those girls decided to enter the industry, and can we reproduce these conditions to encourage others? And I would take this one step further, that if we have, we do have, some examples, obviously, some are here, people who are from diverse backgrounds and have made it into tech. So can we replicate these conditions? What do you think?
It's a bit challenging because, for instance, in my case, in order for me to stand out within the big population and within the big competition that we do have, as a person of color, I needed to learn not only to code, I coded, I've designed, I've did so many things just to be able to stand out. So you like, same probably happened with, I can't speak behalf of women, but like when you fit in this bucket where you need to stand out more, it's so much more like challenging because we have to do more. We have to have more qualifications than average dude would have. We have to have more skills. We have to be more vocal. Otherwise, we're gonna be silenced. We're gonna be undermined, and we were not any gonna be perceived in the first place. So yeah, that's my take on that. It's like it comes from a place where you like, I mean, I think I had to learn like 5 languages, learn to design, to code, to 3D model in order to become noticed within the market. Now, so it's like, I don't even know how to expand on this at this point, but yeah, that's based on the reality I come from.
So let's not replicate those conditions.
Yeah, no, you don't want to replicate
Yeah.
that. What you do want to replicate is enabling more people who are already in the field to go back.
And fix it for the future generation.
Yeah, to go back to talk. Like for example, this is a small program that I do have where I do mentorship for Nigerians and Brazilian students and LGBTQ. And this is my way of giving back. This is my way of enabling them. Some of my mentees are like currently working at big tech companies back in Nigeria. One of my mentee from China, she's worked together with me, and then like after mentoring her, now she's working at Instagram. So it's like, it seems small and we have very limited time, but I think it's also a good way to start giving back, is like offering like at least even if it's 1 hour per week, try to do that, like try to help and yeah, try to enable more.
So don't pull the ladder up behind you. Make it
Yeah.
better for those.
Yeah, exactly. Extend it. Yeah.
But once you find a better approach, it should stay consistent. That's important. If you see something works, keep doing it. Make it better. Don't stop it. So if we have some examples, some successful examples, some role models, see what was positive, encourage that. Awareness is a key factor. With awareness, we can solve lots of problems. Many people don't know that what diversity means, what it can bring, how much it contributes to the economic growth, how much it contributes back to the society. So it comes from the top usually. So governments can play a key role. If the governments today can force the public and the private sector to, let's say, take more Ukrainians and hire them, they can also tell them that consider diversity and inclusion in your agendas. And with that, it should also be supported with monitoring. We should always see if it's really happening or not. Because sometimes we say something, we write directives, we set some rules, but nobody would follow. They would always report that everything is right, but when you go deep and look and see that it's really not happening. So monitoring, transparency is very important.
Okay, that's another good idea.
Yeah, I mean, quotas, recently EU did actually put quotas on how many women there have to be in, on the board seats of public companies. So, okay, it's a very narrow place where to start, but it's a start. That, of course, opens another can of worms. Now people are saying, oh, they will just put some random women there. Yeah, that is a good option. How we can control, well, how the government can control a few things, which are
They can if they want.
Well, I mean, the whole government aspect, I think, opens a can of worms in many people's heads. Like, oh, well, I'm iffy about government. There was a panel earlier today that, is the government spying on me? But I had this thought when I was listening to all of you for some time, is that when you go online And one of the running jokes on the internet is that the IT sector is always looking for, the 20-year-old programmer with 15 years of experience. And when you look up, I'm, for example, looking into lots of sort of subreddits about, cyber and things like that. And a very common topic, again, is people who are, young people who are trying to get into the industry, and they can't. And the reason why I want to bring this up is that, so we have the title like, technology always a sort of 35-year-old white man's world, and there's just this. We've talked about diversity with more women, more people of color, people with disabilities, poor backgrounds. But in many cases, the entry barrier is too high for everyone in certain countries. Well, not in Estonia, because, as you said, if you can code, then you can come by later. We can give you some cards. We're all hiring. But leaving that aside, like in some countries, in general, the expectations of certain companies are so high, and also the expectations to your time that, we will hire you, but you have to work, 12 hours a day or something like this, which kills off a lot of motivation, or is a barrier for even not the 35-year-old white man, but let's say the 22-year-old.
Can you give an example of a country or
well,
reality?
In the U.S., there are quite a few companies where the goal there is that they only want to hire seniors, as in senior developers, for example. And there are companies in Estonia as well who are always complaining. I'm not going to name names, but I do know some companies who are always complaining that we can't find anybody, and then it turns out that they're only hiring senior developers. And any idea of hiring somebody who is younger, may it be man, woman, doesn't matter who is, but no, we only want, ready-made products. So that my point here is that sometimes the barrier is very high for everybody. So the reason why I bring this up as well is I'm sure there are quite a few people listening, but what if I'm not part of the diversity group? So are you saying I should leave IT? But my point here is, should we just, among other ideas, also just lower the IT expectations in general? If you look at quite a lot of the job qualifications, they do expect a lot.
Yeah, and probably they won't use all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a very good point you mentioned, that the barrier is higher for everyone. But imagine in a context where the barrier of entry is higher for everyone, but who has the more likelihood of entering to university faster?
No, I agree with you. My point isn't so much that it's bad for, my point is that how about we bring the barrier down for everybody as well, and then also deal with diversity on top of that? That we should also hire more people in general and expect less of them.
Yeah, that in a beautiful butterfly and unicorns world, that would be perfect. But the reality, we know that's least likely to happen. And as you said, the barrier of high entry is so high. But imagine that's the reason it makes it even more harder to become diverse, because the people who are, as the title said, the people who are most likely to become and to have the likelihood. I'm not saying that a 35 years old white dude don't have challenges. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the likelihood of this happening is bigger for him, of him being more, having more access to more resources, more education, more tools. So it also increases the chances of, even though the barrier of entry is really high, the likelihood of him getting in is higher.
What do others think?
Well, my thinking is a little bit different. From my own experience, those who are raised in rich families, they go to university, they go to good schools, they go to good university, they have private tutors, they don't perform good. Those who are from the poor backgrounds, they usually perform good when they're given the opportunity.
Because they had to fight for it.
They had to fight for it. They know things doesn't come easily. It's an opportunity that they must take benefit of. So this is my personal experience, that the social status, economical status, this doesn't play a role in producing a highly qualified individual.
Do you think that actually, okay, we're talking about this rich white man, kid person, but in the tech sector, has anyone looked into the data? Could it actually be that these are people from less privileged backgrounds? Because I would assume that if you're, really, really privileged, you'd choose a different sector. You'd go.
Yeah, I mean, if you're old money, then probably. But quite often, if we're looking at some of the richest dudes, when in tech, they all come from money. The idea that Jeff Bezos started Amazon in a garage.
Yeah, no, he was a VC.
Elon Musk, he was
his father owned
diamond.
Yeah, good
mine.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, they all come from money. But you are right that it depends also on the country. That in certain countries, especially where. For example, university is free, and that's a good example as well, that if the university is free, then it is more likely to attract people from more poorer backgrounds, and that makes the IT education more equal, for example, because there's better access. Of course, there are still barriers, but there are fewer barriers than in a case where the university costs a lot of money. Like in some countries where, if you look at tuitions in the United States, for example, that is insane, and nobody can afford that. So the idea that if your parents could not, put away $1,000 per month since you were born, therefore your IT dream is over, is an extra barrier. Doesn't matter what skin color you are, though again, structurally. You can see that there's a structural racism in the inequality as well. So most likely there's a geographical difference and there's a skin color difference when it comes to who would have the money to put away. So there are lots of sort of different barriers in different countries. But I've had some questions from here, but is there anybody who wants to use our cube thing? Any audience questions from here? I just remembered that I hadn't asked. Very rudely. Well, seems it's not a popular idea. Okay, let's keep with the Q&A. There's a QR code for you. Okay, but what else can we do to improve this? Are there any ways we can make it? How do we get more diverse people, in your own experience?
I think you can, what happens often, and I've seen in this practice as hiring manager in previous companies, is that generally when the job ad is open, it's just like, it is like you're selling your company, like in the sense of you're selling, oh, this is an awesome company with an awesome team, yada yada, we're building a really cool product, and etc. But this ad generally go as far as certain limitations. So one thing that can be done to improve this is making sure that you increase the locations that you're trying to access. Because, for instance, people sometimes don't hire people from X region or X country because they say the hiring time is higher. They say the hiring time the hiring time is higher, the relocation process is longer, the likelihood of this person being rejected during the police thingy to get their documentation is even higher. So I think that one solution is definitely, despite of all of these possible factors of like the likelihood of being rejected because of whatever, is still to expand to more regions, to more countries. Like for instance, in Brazil, it's like literally more than 200 million people. And the city that I come from is 3 million people. The city alone, it has 2 times the size of Estonia, and it's considered like the digital pole from the north of Brazil. So this means they invested a lot of education in a lot of private tech education centers that educated people, give them scholarships, give them trainings, and capacitated them. But what ended up happening is the amount of job offers are limited, And these people that are capacitated, they end up going to Sao Paulo, they're going to going to elsewhere. But there's still a lot of talent outside of Europe, outside of this regular places that people generally look at.
I have a solution. Need to invest in diverse teams. So if you have companies that are founded by people of diverse backgrounds, it does tend to trickle down because they are already different. So different people will apply for this company, and they will probably most likely hire a generally diverse team. So Deel is a good example. Our founders, Shuo and Alex. Shuo is of Chinese background, Alex is French-Israeli. And our team is very interesting. We have people from all over the world. We have women in leading positions. And, you know, you look at the company and you're applying, I'm like, yeah, I fit in here somewhere. So already kind of inclusion is also happening. So you know you're not going to be the weird one out. But still that comes back to the problem that diverse teams aren't getting the funding. Only the white men are getting the funding. So Deel is, the exception that proves the rule still. And that is a really big problem.
Mohammad?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think the problem comes from the fact that those senior levels who form a company or who run a company, if they are not educated and trained and their level of awareness about diversity and inclusion has not increased, nothing will change. What Liina said, it can happen with newly established companies, but what about a well-established company? It's very difficult to change it because this non-diverse attitude is a cultural issue. It's a social issue, and that requires a cultural and social change. And it cannot happen overnight. It takes years, but we have to start somewhere. And that, as I said earlier, start from home, primary school, and then go up to the university. Then those who are going to be graduated, they will have a different mindset. So with what we already have, we can only do some awareness and trainings. It may play a role, but it will not solve the problem completely.
One thing I would add to that, just quickly, is that, for example, not because I work at the company today, I'm like trying to hype them up, but I'm just being genuine. Working in a company that has like more than 1,000 people, and like for more than 50 nationality, it really, I truly feel the difference. Why? In the previous companies that I've worked in Brazil and in other places, generally my opinion, my ideas were undermined quite a lot, which in the current context, because of the diverse team that we have with people that are so different, when you put your voice out there, when I put my voice out there, I think it has been like one of those few places where I worked and I feel that I'm being heard. And that, like, only that little thing, it seems that it's not a big deal, but like having a place on the table is not enough. Having a place at the table is a step, but having a voice out there, being heard and being respected is also a whole new level. So this is one thing that fascinates me about the organization that I currently work. And Pipedrive has really fascinated me with this. It enabled me to grow within new roles. Like I came as a senior, have grown into to design lead and now design manager. And this is all because they have enabled me to do so. They enabled me with tools of what are the next steps to go and to grow within the organization. Everyone can have this opportunity to grow. These are the things that need to be done. This is how you can perform. And depending on your results and your enthusiasm and what you deliver, it will also reflect on the reality on the daily basis. So if you're heard and if you feel that, damn, I have a space in the world, it makes such a difference in the way that you perform in general.
And I would kind of pick up on you. We mentioned inclusion a bunch of times, and I think a good example of terrible results is what has been happening in the last few years in the gaming industry. I don't know how much any of you have followed this, but it turns out that multiple gaming companies that have very diverse teams, lots of women, lots of people of color, turns out that when any of these people have complained about, for example, massive sexual harassment issues, racism issues, then these complaints have not been taken seriously. And when I hear this, and when a young person, or it doesn't have to be a young person, any person who wants to work for a company, maybe wants to work for a gaming company, why would I go work there? And even if I am, we're still picking on the 35-year-old white man, but even if I'm a 35-year-old white man and I don't want to work in a company where things like that happen, why would I go work there? And where, yes, they hire lots of different people, but then bad things happen. And I think it's very important to also look at the company culture, both in startups but also in old companies, that what are the mechanisms to deal with problems. I mean, I've had plenty of discussions in different settings where all the official paperwork is about diversity. Oh, we need, this is equal opportunities. We support Pride Month. We do all kinds of things, and lots of women-related events and so on. But then, pizza and beer night at the office, and then you hear, I don't know what these women keep complaining about, everything's fine. And then everybody else goes, yeah, exactly. So I mean, in many cases, it's a culture issue as well, and it's not just about hiring. It is also, what you do with these people later, and what is your corporate culture, and letting harassers roam free is not good for anybody. May they be male, female, or any age or any racial background. But I have a question for you three. I like this one. It's an intriguing one. Do you have mixed feelings about not trying to create the Pokemon collection? It is unfair because I use that one, but in your team at work, but at the same time being part of a Pokemon collection on a panel like this? So.
We are missing a certain someone from this panel.
Yeah.
We had one more person, but
that was a good one.
I really like this question. Well done, Elle, for asking this question.
Lol.
For the record, we didn't have a checklist.
Oh, I think it would be weird if it was actually the contrary. Like, if you didn't have the Pokemon collection, then you have talking about the same topic that you're talking about, but a bunch of white dudes. That would be actually weird. Talking about diversity.
Oh, but that happens all the time.
Yeah,
there are lots of panels about women, for example, where
there's only one woman. Yeah, I've seen those. So.
But I don't know. Do you feel that this is a Pokemon collection kind of situation?
From my perspective, a good example is us here. Me, Liina, Jackson, and you. So I want such a thing to happen. This is what I call diversity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My presence, Jackson's presence, Liina's, and yours. This itself is diversity. This should happen everywhere.
Yeah. This should be normal and not considered a Pokemon collection in the first place.
Yeah, I think, part of it is also how people are chosen. And you weren't chosen like, okay, we need a black man, preferably Latin American.
Ooh.
Okay, is there one in Estonia? It was more that people who might have an opinion on the topic, but also who deal with this topic, who have some hiring practices. There was a bit of a Pokemon moment, for example, that we needed somebody from academia. We needed somebody from the private sector. We did want there to be men and women, but people with different backgrounds, and we did want foreigners because we didn't want this discussion to be just about Estonia. Because I think Estonia is, it has its issues, but they're not the same issues as global issues. And in order to understand our issues, you also have to understand what happens elsewhere. And I teach international relations in school, and my experience is that most people don't really know what happens in the world, they think that your backyard is pretty much the same everywhere else. But for example, as you pointed out, the demographics of Brazil or sort of very different experiences working in different companies. I think that's important to bring to the discussion. But yeah, I mean, we have different backgrounds, but we all had experiences and we're all qualified to speak here. I think that's sort of the example. And also, we did listen to all of your opinions. The Pokemon collection would be if we had, well, thank you all, and now I'm going to do all the talking, which some of you who know me, is not difficult to achieve.
But I guess this kind of proves the point that we are here all different and we all learn something new from each other. So this is what I would like to see also at work. And the people I surround myself, that I learn something new from them. They are not like me who grew up, went to the same school, did the same things for the next 20, 30 years. Because then you get stuck in, you stagnate. So that's why diversity works, because not a single one person is able to know everything themselves. They need to learn from others.
So we're almost out of time. We had a question up as well. You can see that right now. And as you can see, the ideas are pretty much evenly staked. A bit more on the education, but otherwise more or less the same. That just improve things on different levels. But I'm going to give you all final words. I started earlier with Jackson, so now I'm going to start with Mohammad.
Well, my final word would be that I would like to see a world, a diverse world with lots of inclusion, because we see people are now moving from their own country. They move and migrate to other countries. They live, they work there. So I would like to see more of diversity and inclusion in all sectors, not only ICT, everywhere.
All right, thank you. Liina?
Yeah, I mean, diversity, it's obviously the right thing to do, not discriminating anyone based on their gender or race or any other differences. But if we're looking at it from the tech world perspective, the goal is to make money. So if you're a founder of a tech company and you're a horrible sexist racist, if you build a diverse team, you'll make more money. So I think they should consider it.
Yeah.
All right. Jackson?
My final word would be also not to only this, I think that diversity comes from not only when foreigners come to one place, but when the locals go to other places. Most of the experience that I've had with any scenario or people that are aggressively racist against me were people who never saw other places. So my only suggestion, and from the bottom of my heart, is to, if possible, when possible, go out there, explore, meet more people. This is like the foundational part that can make you be able to understand a tiny bit more how to be able to receive people within this amazing country that is Estonia, that has received me for the past 4 years. It is go out, go visit people, go talk to people, be genuinely interested. And the other thing is not being racist is not enough. You need to be anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobic. You really need to stand up. If you can't, not because you're not racist, that you just need to not be racist. You need to, if you see a friend or a colleague or anyone being or doing such type of acts, whatever it's the context, stand up, be vocal about it. I think this is one of the biggest and the crucial step to generating a more diverse and inclusive society.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you everybody for listening to us here and at home. It was a pleasure. I hope that you learned some new things, and maybe we gave you some food for thought, hopefully. And thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.